Okay, I am extraordinarily pleased to have the next presenter present and as a guest. His name is Jay Abraham. He is a marketing genius. He's probably responsible for making more people marketing experts and consultants than probably anyone alive. He's known as the $9.4 billion man. He's worked in over 465 different industries. He popularized a unique selling proposition, just a ton of stuff. And he's probably never done a 10-minute talk in his entire life. So this has really created a presentation. But Jay is a brilliant genius. And so with great pleasure, I want to introduce Mr. Jay Abraham.
First thing, I'm overdressed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a PowerPoint, but I'm not going to use it because I think I can give you better if you'll let me be the one person that uses his stupid notes. And I got more notes than 10 minutes, so I'll just stop when it dings. So, but you can put my, go backwards. Yes, yeah, that's it. So that's the topic on thinking differently, because I'm known for thinking different than anybody else. And I'm going to try to give you the why as Joe's thing, and I'll give you as much contextualization. So I'm going to start with a couple of things I wrote last night because I think it'll be better than this PowerPoint. So the real question is why people fail to recognize the obvious. A guy I think at Cornell did something really interesting, and I read it a couple of years ago, and it was bizarre, and I want to quote it because he said, most incompetent people don't know they're incompetent. And one of the reasons, this is very interesting, one of the reasons ignorant people tend to be blissfully self-assured. Think about that, blissfully self-assured is because the skills required for competency are often the same skills necessary to recognize competency. So this is really interesting. So the incompetent, think about this, and this is going to get into what I'm going to say. The incompetent suffer doubly because, first of all, they reach erroneous conclusions that make them delighted, and they make really bad choices, but their incompetence robs them of the ability to even recognize reality. And the key here is I want to give you a different reality. I want to give you a different reality. But I'm going to give you another quote because I love quotes. So Socrates says, a life unexamined is a life not worth living. I believe a business that isn't constantly re-examined is a business not worth living. Okay, so now we're going to get into this good stuff, and I did it the other night, so all that stuff that I threw out the door, bear with me. I'm known for being this guy. I can look at strategy, marketing, business models, positioning, preemption, all that stuff from a different point of view, and I want to tell you the why and the how, and then what it means to you, because it's irrelevant if I'm that good and you don't know how to do it. I'm not that good. I've just been exposed to so damn many higher, better, easier, faster, safer ways to do stuff than most people have ever been exposed to. And I want to explain a little bit of my history, how, why, and give you a context for yourself. So I am hopelessly curious. I just love learning about everything I don't know about. And my career, I have no education. My career started because I was fortunate that I sort of self-selected. I was attracted, and bear with me because I've done 86 hours spontaneously, but I want to make sure I give you this, to people who always could look at a situation from a different slant. They seem to know how to untangle Gordian knots that no one else in their industry even figured out was a deterrent. You know, I realize that most entrepreneurs are confounded and they're impeded by knots, puzzles, status quo thinking, acceptance, challenging business dilemmas they don't even know they're struggling with. Seriously, okay. So if you don't know you're struggling with it, you can't solve it. So I've developed a really fascinating way of looking at life, and it's because of the influence of confluence. And by that I mean, I hope I'm saying it right, I've had such a diversity of experience, and I thought that I share a little bit about the generalities, and I'll tell you some of the experiences and what I learned from it, and then give you a context for yourself. So the one thing, and I was thinking about this for the first time because Joe said do this, and I'm running because I got now 6 minutes left, is the people that I was exposed to were always felt like they were leading a revolution, a crusade. It was not about being, it was very much like Dean said, and I'll be very fast, but they had indefatigable enjoyment for what they did, not just what they did industry-wise, but who they were doing it for, meaning their clients, the impact they were having on their business. And I realized that most entrepreneurs are restricted, limited, they're stuck and don't even know it. And I'm going to share with you now some of the ways that I got to develop what I call divergent thinking, funnel vision versus tunnel vision. So I'm going to go through all the things I experienced for the first third of my life quickly and tell you what I learned from, and then give you the. So when I was 17, I read the book Tom Sawyer, loved it. I had a job painting fire hydrants. I got paid 50 cents a piece. I thought, what would happen if I gave a bunch of 14-year-olds the paint and the fire hydrant, told them how much fun it was, and gave them a quarter, and I made about $4,000 a week while I read biographies. When I was 18, I worked for a commercial financial company that financed farm equipment. I learned that farm equipment is not financed like regular. It's not every month. It's by the seasons of harvest, and you structure the deal depending upon the way they harvest. They harvest 1 crop yield, 2 crop yield, 3 crop yields. When I was a little older, I worked for a charge card, different than a credit card. A charge card is really wealthy people who charge stuff and pay for it at the end of the month. Most of them were always late. You had to be able to motivate, finesse, diplomatically compel them to pay their bill in the moments of a transaction when they would call in and they would be either over limit, and it taught you incredible ways to deal with influence and implication without ever offending anybody. I was working for a company that was a big investment financial company in Indianapolis, and the young Scion loved me. Everyone liked me because I was young and interesting when I was 18. And the guy took me aside and said, "You've got to always be a trend spotter. You've got to be ahead of it rather than behind it." They invested in, now it's a lot of you young people, they invested in gas stations that were self-serve before it was legal to be self-serve. They invested in cable TV before anybody had cable TV. I worked for Hertz Truck Leasing, and they taught me there's no money in leasing trucks. There's incredible triple profit if you throw into it maintenance for 3 years, and there's an incredible difference if you get 3 or 4 extra mils. That's fractions of a cent per mile for a truck that goes 1 million miles a year on a 3-year lease. I'm just going through it. I worked in the association business, and most small groups can't afford their own association. I met a guy, I was always attracted to these nonlinear thinkers. This guy was very smart. He'd go to associations that couldn't afford, it's 35 years ago, an association. He'd charge half the price of them doing their own, but he would have 5 of them. He'd make twice or thrice what everybody else made. He would repurpose the salespeople, the staff, the organization, the lobbyists. Very, very, very interesting. And I'm going to bring all this stuff home very quickly. I worked in the radio business, and I learned you could have something very desirable, and you can make people buy a lot of undesirable things, packages. I learned that you could create buying power at will because time costs nothing, but you can trade it for cars, and you can trade it for furniture, and you can trade it for restaurants. I learned that you can repurpose one station and have an AM and FM. I learned that you can package more exciting things together like trips and get people to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I learned that you can go to people who don't advertise and give them something exciting that's non-threatening, like 1 spot a week on the Cincinnati Bengals, and they'll buy it. Very interesting. I sold electric shavers. Nobody wants to buy electric shavers. Retailers don't care about electric shavers. They only sell electric shavers at Father's Day and Christmas. So you got to give them something else exciting. So I had to find a way to make no co-op marketing dollars. Co-op is what you earn when you buy it. Go a long way. So I'd buy billboards at the end of the year for retailers, and nobody ever buys the billboards at the end of the year, so you can buy them for 5 cents on the dollar. I'd buy millions of dollars of billboards for about $10,000 and give that to people if they bought shavers. And I realized all the psychology of all these things. I was in the consignment business. I realized that somebody else's distress is always somebody else's opportunity. I found a guy that had $10 million, I'm dating myself, of 8-track stereo tapes in a warehouse, and I put it in the equivalent of 7-Elevens, and I made $5,000 a week just by the connection. I found a guy that had $1 million worth of curio items, and I put it in all kinds of specialty shops in Indianapolis and made thousands of dollars a week just for making the connection. I worked for a company called J.W. Gibson, and everyone else bought growth companies. He bought loser companies, companies that are on the way down, third generations. He bought them for 3 reasons. One, The third, fourth generation didn't have a clue what all the equipment was worth, what the building was worth. He would buy it, pre-sell all the equipment, all the building, make a profit before he ever closed. He bought chemical businesses that always could be integrated into his master business that had enormous capacity. He could duplicate all the services, and he had distribution that could grow it, and he taught that to me. It was really interesting. We were the first people to do, I'm so old, we did Watts, telemarketing seems antiquated now. We were in it before anyone ever did it. We were in it when IBM had photoelectric paper readers where you had automatic, and we used to learn how to send letter upon letter with every scenario, and that sequencing and unrelenting value communication is like a positive Chinese water torture. I worked for ICEOT, and we had no money, but I learned incremental cost. I learned allowable cost. I learned how to overcome preemptively all the negatives. I learned how a lot of littles can be worth a lot. We had 1,000. Was that the ding? Okay, I'm going to quote. I'm just going to quote. Yeah, the trick is you got to learn what you don't know, and you got to observe what it means to you, and you got to look at things different. I'll quote from, I like the old Apple commercial. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules and have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify, vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may seem as crazy and wild ones, we see them as geniuses. How else can you stare at an empty canvas and see a work of art, or sit in silence and hear a song that's never been written, or gaze at a red planet and see a laboratory on wheels? Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Thank you.